I will, however, make this comparison at the domestic level. In Washington, D.C., the United States Trade Representative and the Department of State have different motivations and different priorities when it comes to trading arrangements. The State Department is all about politics. The USTR is all about economics, the granularity, the details, this paragraph and that paragraph. Now, that leads to a certain tension between these two perspectives. A critical question at the moment is, what would the U.S. do if China knocked on the door, China, leaving aside Taiwan, knocked on the door of the TPP? It is unclear to me exactly how this could evolve. I do know that recently, just last week, in Bali, at the APEC meeting, hosted by Indonesia, and let us remember that the next APEC meeting is going to be hosted by China. And it's very interesting because if China is developing the RCEP as an alternative to a TPP/APEC, China will be hosting the APEC meeting that would presumably be conditioned as a step forward toward arriving at an eventual free trade area across the Pacific, an FTAP, which the Americans are pushing very heavily. So we get a lot of ironies here. Suffice it to say that the Chinese position, I will articulate it for you from last week, from the meeting in Bali. This is a quote from a Chinese scholar with the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. Quote, "We have not been invited to join the TPP negotiations. Since we have not been invited, we do not know what the provisional text says, and therefore we cannot decide whether to join or not. Transparency is the key." As you know, these negotiations are being conducted in secret. Every now and then, somebody leaks something. Darrell Issa, a Republican representative from California, recently leaked the entire IPR text. You know, it's sort of like Eric Snowden in trade negotiations. Very interesting. And that, of course, is a point of concern for a lot of opponents of the TPP, including the woman who sang the song that you could not hear just a few minutes ago. Now, a former Australian trade minister responded to the Chinese scholar in Bali last week as follows, quote, "No country has been invited to join the TPP negotiations. If you are interested, you can simply approach the existing members proactively. They will give you a piece of paper listing the conditions for joining negotiations, and if you like them, come on. If you're just passively waiting for the invitation, it will never come." So it's not a question of invitation. Come on board. Now, I'm curious to know what will happen next month at the third plenum of the National People's Congress in China when the issue of economic reform, and whether economics makes any sense at all as a description of domestic economic reform in China, whether that issue will come up and what will be done. And to the extent that China wishes to join the TPP in order to lock in, quote unquote, domestic reform, that will be an interesting alternative to another position, which is that the United States is trying to lock out China of the TPP. And in that direction lies, it seems to me, further tensions and possibly the eventual introduction of some version of an economic Cold War between China and the United States. All right, so let me simply end on the following note, complementing the focus here on access to the TPP with the question of access to the RCEP. It has not been said, I don't believe so far, although I was typing and maybe I missed this, that an ostensible, quote unquote, an ostensible precondition for joining RCEP is that you have to have an FTA with ASEAN. It's based on ASEAN Plus. It's a sovereigntist agreement in which you take the status quo. All these countries have separate agreements, free trade agreements with ASEAN, and you build a roof on top of the rooms. And you don't alter the rooms. It's explicitly stated in the terms of RCEP that those FTA arrangements will stay intact. So it's a sovereigntist arrangement. Again, I want to really emphasize that. And if you read the guiding principles and objectives for the RCEP, you do come across an interesting phrase. That RCEP provides for, quote, and I'll end here, an open accession clause to enable the participation of any ASEAN FTA partner. The United States is not an ASEAN FTA partner. I don't believe Taiwan is either. Any ASEAN FTA partner that did not participate in the RCEP negotiations. And here's the critical phrase. And any other external economic partner after the completion of the negotiations. So what this means is that Taiwan or the United States, absent any kind of FTA with ASEAN, could still consider themselves external economic partners if they were willing to join the RCEP after the negotiations are concluded. And it's very problematic as to whether the United States would be willing to do that. Emphasis, closure, dynamism is what I want to really stress. This is a very fast-moving, sort of liquid situation. I'm not going to predict an outcome, except to suggest that the fundamental priority on all sides, from my perspective, should be to avoid a situation in which you have two geographically and ideologically opposing agreements. The sovereigntist on the one hand, the intrusivist on the other, presided over by, respectively, China and the United States.
Thank you, Don. If there ever really is a true free trade agreement coming out of that institution. Also on the table, if in fact the single line which is devoted to bilateral preferential trade agreements were expanded to include all of those, list all of those agreements, we would see quite quickly that most of the trade agreements in the region are in fact in that category, and there are a very large number of them. Now, if the real trade agreements negotiated or proposed were arrayed on a timeline, as the paper makes clear, the region really would have had only one or possibly two such trade agreements before the year 2000. That would be the ASEAN Free Trade Agreement and the Australia-New Zealand bilateral trade agreement. And after 2000, there are many. There's a proliferation. There's a tremendous upsurge in the production of these trade agreements. So the second question, the second point I would make is why this pattern, which is so striking compared to other regions. In other regions, the 1990s really were the decade of regional agreements. Mercosur, in South America, NAFTA in North America, the deepening of the European Union, including a monetary agreement. That wasn't true, really, by and large, in the 1990s in Asia Pacific, but it was true after the year 2000. Now, the authors argue, I think correctly, that shocks often produce an impetus for an interest in these sorts of agreements. And the question is, what are these shocks? And they give several candidates. For example, at the end of the 1990s, the Asian financial crisis. But it seems to me, if you look at their clusters of trade agreements, and you also read carefully and listen as you add,
one will be more in the future. This one actually is a railroad starting from Chongqing through Xinjiang to Europe. It has become official in August this year. Actually, this was a program promoted by Guo Xilai before he fell. And currently, it took between 14 to 16 days to get, to ship all the laptop computer made in Chongqing to European market. And now, actually, they have signed an agreement not allowing any country in the middle to exempt the product, just to speed up, the transportation time. And that reduced the shipping time for about 24 days if this is shipped through ocean. Now, China always also actually, especially in May, as Premier Li Keqiang visited South Asia, he proposed two things. One is an economic corridor between China and Pakistan. The other one is
before my departure from Taiwan, I had no access to any of the research papers presented here today. Only in the last minute, I received the paper from Professor Chen, a long-time friend. I was waiting eagerly to try to read it, and so his paper is the only one I received prior to here. I left 2 days earlier from Taipei, and I understand that Dr. Chen was recently accompanied former Vice President Zhao Wantang to attend the CAPEC summit as the representative of our country. Therefore, he explained his absence, why I was waiting to see his paper. So, in the beginning, when I saw the agenda of this program, I was hoping to prepare myself to comment on challenges for Taiwan's future development strategy in a changing global economy, which normally should be a cup of tea for Professor Chen, who has both taught and worked in the government. And however, when I look at the paper, I think it has a narrower focus, which probably will be the focus of my comment today. I would like to make 8 points, and then in the end, add 3 more for Dr. Chen, if time permit, to explain to us his view on the 3 points at the end. First of all, as I indicate, this article does not really address to Taiwan's future development strategy in general. It focuses on the changing pattern of the ASEAN plus China economic relationship and its effect on Taiwan's manufacturing industry. Its analysis rely very heavily on import-export figures since the year 2000. By focusing on trade, Professor Chen does not look into the impacts of other non-economic variables, which I think are also important, such as cultural factor, ethnicity, and geopolitics, which were quite important in the effort to understand Southeast Asian economy, either in terms of its internal dynamics or in terms of Southeast Asian countries' economic interactions with both mainland China and Taiwan. Simply put, that in that region, overseas Chinese have strong political and economic influence. They contribute to the local economic development, and more recently in facilitating the linkage between China through investment and trade. The second point in the non-economic aspect is that even Taiwan's economic presence in Southeast Asia can also be at least partially attributed in part to this social network that is between the Taiwanese investor, trader, and the local Chinese community. Thirdly, China-ASEAN links are also facilitated in some respect by ever faster transportation network, particularly land-based network, such as railroad, highways, and of course airlines and shipping, which in some way provide multiple networking for logistic access between China and ASEAN countries. That in part explains why the economic tie between the two have moved so fast now, even though the trade agreement does help considerably. The third point concerns the questions of trade with China and how that affects ASEAN. In his excellent paper on page 5, he argues that trade, I quote, trade with China has led ASEAN to become more specialized, and that the reasons given for the year 2000 to 2010